All right, welcome Grace to the podcast. Welcome back, Mitchell. I had to bring Mitchell to this since he's the friend with crypto and accounting experience, and I got like a C barely in accounting. So if we have any hope of understanding this company and everything that Grace is going to teach us, I'm going to need your help.
I'm here to help the best I can.
Thank you. And Grace, we have chatted a few times. I met you through the Athena network, so we can like sort of get into that if we want, but we clearly have a shared passion for leverage and delegation and excitement. And I know there's like the first hire of your startup was Athena, but this is not about that. This is about you. Where like my favorite opening question is who are your heroes?
This is a good question. I actually spent a lot of time thinking about this one because I was like, there's honestly so many people that I admire, and there's in all different facets of life. I think if I were to narrow it down to, let's say, like 3 people that I really, really look up to, one is my friend Kathy. She actually was one of the co-founders of the first crypto startup that I ever worked at a couple of years ago. And I kind of took this leap of faith to join her on this crazy adventure. And it was called Dunya Labs, and we were building tooling and infrastructure for EOS, if you guys remember that one. And it was really interesting because it was a super early industry. We were all really young. This was our first startup, and we did have an actual product, and we did have actual customers and actual revenue, but we just mistimed the market way too early and maybe in hindsight bet on the wrong chain. So I went on this crazy adventure with her where we were building the company actually in Bangalore. And basically I can think of my life as before that and after that. So that's one. I don't know if you guys are familiar with John Green or Hank Green. I'm obsessed with them as well. They do a lot of great content on YouTube. They have this thing called Crash Course History, Crash Course Philosophy, Crash Course Chemistry, tons of really, really fun videos to binge watch there, and also incredible writers. And then lastly, Emma Watson. So those are my 3 heroes.
Oh, I love Emma Watson. I like almost went to Brown and like found out later that that's when Emma Watson would have been there. And now I'm like, fuck, I should have gone to Brown. I could have been best friends with Emma Watson. My whole life would be different. Yeah, she's awesome. That's very, very exciting. Mitchell, have you answered that question? Also, I think it's so funny. It's like such a massive conscientiousness test. Most people don't bother asking for questions before they come on a podcast. And Grace was like, could you please send me the questions like 2 weeks ahead of time? I would like to contemplate and get organized and do 2 prep calls. And I was like, sure, whatever you want. Most people are just like, I'll just show up and whatever happens, happens. So very conscientious trait.
That's where I would be. Yeah.
That's where you have been multiple times. I can call you in the morning and be like, Mitchell, 20 minutes podcast. Let's go. And you're like,
let's go.
Okay.
It's a remarkably high variance, but it can be great. It can crash and burn.
Yeah. 2 sides of different coins. So where Grace did you first sort of see the need for Domo? Where did you encounter sort of the problem that led to starting this company?
Yeah, so my background is actually in finance and accounting. That's what I studied in school. In my career, I've been fortunate to be able to find different opportunities to manage different areas of a business, which is, I think, what led me to being pulled into joining a crypto venture studio in 2021. They kind of brought me on board as the founding COO, and it was right at the beginning of the company. So I was being pulled in to set up the entities and help set up all of the financial infrastructure and the operation stack for the venture studio, as well as for some of the portfolio companies that we were already working with at this time. And so it was kind of like everything that was business, quote unquote, was on my shoulders. Legal, accounting, finance, operations, compliance, taxes, all those things. And I was really just living it day in and day out. This was 99% of what I did. And what I found was that, for each of the companies that I was working with, they had a foot in the fiat world or the cash world, and they also had a foot in the crypto world in terms of how they were even running the companies. So it was pretty standard to set up the fiat stack. You get a bank account, and then you get JustWorks or Gusto, and you get Expensify, and it's all pretty straightforward. You get QuickBooks. On the crypto side, things were the complete opposite. It was not straightforward at all. And it was very difficult to find out what solutions people could even use to do that. And so I struggled with kind of just using the very rudimentary tools that were available at the time, Google spreadsheets, and just kind of basic wallets. And I started asking around other people in the space who are also crypto operators, just wondering, was I missing something? I'm new to this. Maybe I'm still getting up to speed. I'm just learning the ropes. And through those conversations that I had, I realized that everyone was doing the same thing that I was doing, which was basically building the same Google Sheet in different ways and using the same rudimentary tools. So I started to kind of realize through that if we wanted serious businesses to be built and we wanted serious companies to be built, we needed serious professional tools to be able to support that.
Yeah, it's such an interesting, like the co-evolution of tools in industry, I think is really interesting, and we'll see it in crypto. It'll be interesting to see how much has to get rebuilt in crypto.
And I think the interesting thing, and Grace and I had the chance to catch up a couple of days ago and jam, and I was like, we got to save it for the pod. We can't, we got too far along too quickly. But I ran into the exact same problem in working with a big NFT project on Solana these 5 guys had started up this NFT project and they were making great revenue and they had all the kind of pieces of a real business and really had no accounting stack because they just didn't know how to do it. And like Grace, I was just about to go do the same thing. Go, hey, let's get someone to code some kind of script that will rip all the transactions into a Google Sheet and foreign exchange them to USD. And the fact that everyone has to start from level 0 principles of I'm going to reinvent an accounting system is a lot of, it rhymes a lot with a lot of the kind of like web 1.0 problems, or like the Jeff Bezos, does this make your beer taste better? No, we're reinventing accounting when we should be making a real product,
Yeah, totally. And I think the other, difficult part about this is that in the early days of this industry, a lot of the founders and entrepreneurs that are working in the space don't necessarily come from a formal operating background. And so, maybe they are a little bit familiar with accounting, maybe a little bit familiar with finances, but something that we found very often when we were speaking to these teams is that they were trying to track the information, but they weren't always sure what information exactly they needed to track. And so inevitably at the end of the year, or when they did start to work with accountants, they had to go all the way back to the beginning and figure out, wait, okay, totally missed this column. Where are the Block Explorer links for this? What was the US dollar value of this token at that time of the transaction? And there's all these different pieces that I think if you don't come from that type of background, you just don't know to think about. And it ends up really coming back to bite you later on.
You're like, I was supposed to withhold taxes? Really? That whole time? But I have
But
no
all the
money
crypto
now.
money's gone. Yeah.
But I'm poor.
Yeah. So let me see if I can summarize Domo sufficiently for you. So I'm looking at the homepage now, and it's basically, it's business banking, financial operations, payroll, expenses, like all of the functions that you need on sort of the operations side of a business with a blockchain background, like assuming that a wallet is your bank account instead of a fiat bank account, correct?
Yeah, that's right.
Okay. So it would replace, so if we're doing an analogy between like fiat stack, crypto stack, instead of a bank account, you have a wallet. Instead of Gusto and QuickBooks, you have Domo.
I would say it's probably the more akin to the kind of first example that you gave where, what we're, I think, enabling people to do is to have as many, quote, bank accounts as they want in the form of self-custody wallets. So a lot of the teams that we've spoken to, they often have on average about 5 wallets. And these wallets can be on multiple chains. And these wallets could be in different formats. And what we're providing through Domo is this kind of interface that allows you to feel as if you are interacting with a bank account, and it feels like it's a banking experience. But you can actually take all of your different, quote, bank accounts, which in this case are actually wallets, and connect them. And that is now your banking interface.
Okay. You still sort of like have a normal-ish interface for understanding it the same way you would understand a business's, financials and inflows and outgoes. And then you're set up well for taxes and financial statements and stuff.
Right, exactly. Because you are basically very confident that we're pulling in all of the asset information about your crypto, all of the transactional information about your crypto. And this interface that we've built out makes it so that it's very easy for you to go in and contextualize those transactions. Some of the questions that we hear very often are like, hey, this thing from 6 months ago, I have no idea why I did this. I don't remember what it was for. I don't remember who it was to. Now what do we do? And so it's kind of a way to encourage people to make sure that they are keeping accurate and complete records of what they're doing along the way, and not making it feel like homework, not making it feel like a chore. So I think that's really like the biggest benefit for both business teams as well as accountants who maybe eventually are looking at this information, because it's like, oh, it's already all there. I don't need to ask a bazillion questions. And now that I have this very clean data set that I'm able to extract out of Domo, I can then take this and maybe plug it into QuickBooks, plug it into my accounting software, which is purpose built for accounting, to then do the additional transformations that I need. If we kind of go back to that business banking experience analogy, like you mentioned, what some of the other things that we help our teams do is make payments on chain, very similar to how in a bank account, you'd be able to send an ACH or send a wire in a way that feels very easy because you're using, the banking interface. It's very similar for us. You've connected your wallets, and we give you a safe way to kind of interact with crypto payments. So, there's kind of error checks that make sure that you're filling in the address properly and it's on the correct chain and you're not missing any letters. It's this and that, and a few other different kind of guardrails, let's say. But we do also, offer kind of the ability for people to, make payments in crypto more confidently.
Oh, I logged in and was playing around with the product, and one cool thing was like you could add your Mercury account on that. They've integrated very well with Mercury, and so like this would be almost, hey, I'm running this company and I have this Mercury account that's like one of my chains, but it's almost secondary to, I operate day to day in crypto, and I have this kind of savings account off to the side that's in fiat. But then, like, Grace, you said at the beginning, like, oh, well, we know how to do this. We have JustWorks or Gusto, and we have Mercury, and we have Expensify, and we have like, Mercury doesn't really do everything. They have crypto company, or they have companies out there who are the JustWorks for crypto that you can then start to like build together with, right? Or how are you thinking about that?
Yeah, no, for sure. I think this is an area where the problem space is so huge, and there are many different areas where if you focus on just that subset of the problem, that's either like an industry or an entire business in and of itself with its own level of complexity. So I think for us, the way that we're kind of thinking about it is, we are really excited to focus on the collaborative aspects of being the business interface for people to kind of interact with their transactions. And there are opportunities to partner with people who are specialized in certain areas. Like, for example, QuickBooks is specialized accounting software. We think that makes a lot of sense and, allows people to be a little bit more perhaps defined about what tool is used for what thing. I think, there's a lot of opportunities to play around with integrations as we kind of figure out how this industry evolves.
Yeah. The thing you said about sending payments is interesting. That I was in a DAO. I guess I still am. I don't really know how you leave a DAO. I'm still in the Discord, so I guess I'm still in the DAO. Index Coop that was like paying people it just like dozens of people every week for based on a ton of different variables. And there's like spreadsheets and copy pasting of addresses constantly. So I think there's like a huge, like for crypto to fulfill some of the visions that people have around streaming payments or highly like sort of variable based, like consistent compensation and incentive alignment, like the sending of payments is huge and critical. And to your point, like you need to account for all of that. You need to organize it. You need to know who it's going to and why, so that when you show up at Mitchell's doorstep with all your like block explorers and accounting statements that at the end of the year that look like Swiss cheese, he doesn't kill you and send you to a different CPA. Or if you get audited, you don't like you go into audited into oblivion.
Yeah, I know those can be nightmares as well.
I feel like we've only begun to hear the nightmares in that story of that type.
Yeah, there is so much. Again, just going back to the accountant at the end of the year who's doing your taxes, just is like, okay, give me your books and let's get your tax return done, and then crypto going back to like before first principles, just like zeroth principles. You have this person who goes, I know at the beginning of the year I had $50,000. I know today I have $250,000, and I have no idea how I got there. Or you know what I mean? Between wormholes and bridges and chains and blah, 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 blah. And to institutionalize this experience is going to be a massive opportunity and a huge jump. Talking to people who are real accountants and kind of real institutional crypto, they have 250 wallets and they have to keep everything straight, and they need better tools than the tools on the market today. So
yeah, Grace, who's kind of the first customer for this? Is this DAOs? Is this individual businesses that are sort of run by people that are like in the crypto space? Like what are you seeing so far?
Yeah, I would say, when we first started speaking to teams, this message resonated a lot with two main types of user personas, let's say. Number one is the co-founder or the founder of a project where, again, they maybe don't come from a formal operations background, but they are trying to run a business. They are trying to run their startup in a way where they can kind of report back to investors and say, yeah, we've got everything under control. We're managing our burn well. Here's maybe some high level financials. So that's one persona, the kind of co-founder or founder of a project. Maybe if the project is slightly larger, they have a dedicated operations manager or head of operations. And then on the other side, definitely accountants.
Yeah. Okay. So when you say a project, what is that kind of like what Mitchell described as like an NFT project or a DAO or like some crypto tool where people are earning in crypto? Like what falls under the umbrella of projects?
Yeah. So for us, I would say it's a team or a group of people that is seeking to build it or run a business in some way on crypto using digital assets. So yes, this could be a DAO. Yes, this could be a VC funded crypto startup. Yes, this could be an NFT project. I think it's really any group of people that happens to run all or some of their operations on chain. In terms of who we're kind of focusing on as a target customer at this time, I think it's really more narrowed down to, kind of project founders and, operations leads, as well as accountants.
Okay. Yeah. I imagine you get calls from accountants who like, I can't imagine how many accountants this year just got like a call from somebody who started something new and is like, good news, bad news. I made some money. It's in a wallet. That's all the information I have. Can you please account for me? And like, I don't even know, Mitchell, where do you even start with that?
Well, yeah, you start by going like, hey, let's get a Google sheet. Let's list every public wallet you've ever had in the history of your whole life that you can remember. And then to your point, Grace, you're filling in gaps. You're like, where did $50,000 go? And they're like, I don't know. You know? So, I mean, yeah, there are consumer tools out there that we've used, Coinly and Zen Ledger and Token Tax, that kind of are designed to aggregate all of these transactions into one so that hopefully you can do your taxes. Like that's one problem that frankly a lot more people have than Grace's problem. But the Grace's problem is a growing problem of, we are a crypto first business that has a crypto element to our financial operations, and we have no treasury manager, or our treasury management is some script that some dude on Upwork wrote that dumps into a Google Doc that breaks every few days, and that's supported by a bunch of VLOOKUPs. And like that's one way to run a business. But yeah, there are enough businesses out there now. And like Grace and I were talking, like tools are now easy enough to make that somebody gets to come in and make a tool that solves what's today a pretty niche problem, but is a growing problem.
Yeah, and gonna like continue to grow, not just the scale of the number of businesses that are already sort of like in the crypto space, right? Because they're selling something inherently crypto, but the number of businesses that I think like, I'm really curious to hear probably both of your takes about when the tools basically get easy enough that we'll see like quote unquote normal fiat businesses adopt a crypto path because it's easy enough and people want to pay their plumber through their wallet in ETH or stables or something like that, rather than like, is that the future that you envision with Domo, Grace, is sort of like enabling that to be another channel?
Yeah, 100%. And I would say that that future is already here. And we see this already happening with, quote, normal businesses. So, if you think about security auditing firms, they are working in the crypto industry, but the service that they're providing is really around code audits and going in and looking at code. And so they're not necessarily creating a crypto token themselves, right? Unless they decide to take that on as a separate project, but they are providing services and they are being paid in crypto, in tokens, in stable coins. And their whole business is taking money in this way. And there's also some law firms out there now that accept crypto or stablecoin as a form of payment. And so I think what's really fascinating to me about this is that you are already seeing traditional, quote, businesses today interacting with crypto in a very meaningful way because they're essentially earning their livelihood in crypto, in this new technology. And there have been a few other businesses that we've spoken to that might have international presence, whether their vendors are in a different country or their customers are in a different country. And they've kind of recognized the value of being able to very easily send and receive value via crypto compared to the systems that they have to deal with today, where it could take up anecdotally, up to 17 days for a company to get money from France to the US. And that's wild for a business that's really trying to manage their cash flow.
Just get on the plane with a bag of cash. That's insane.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. So, I do think we're already starting to see these businesses do these things today. And I do think this trend is going to continue where, as more and more people, as more and more businesses interact with crypto, and I think there's a little bit of maybe on both sides, a bit of education and also, improving the user experience and the onboarding experience. But at some point, there's going to be kind of this wave that can't really be stopped because there's this natural gravity that people have towards solutions that are more convenient and that do the thing that they're trying to do more conveniently. And I think crypto and kind of blockchain, or just, digital assets, we could call them, present a solution that make it a lot more convenient for people to handle payments.
I think two real world examples we've seen just play out over the past 15 years are Venmo, that turned into Cash App, that turned into Zelle, of making peer-to-peer payments really, really easy, and then spurring like these cottage industries of like Facebook Marketplace and moms and boyfriends and girlfriends and all these people just sending money all over to themselves. Like, go into your Venmo feed and just watch what's happening in the world. And then the other big one, which I've talked about before, I think like Apple Pay for crypto is going to be humongous. Of I can tap the side of my phone twice and pay at a register with crypto. Like, that unlocks the universe of crypto. And that's like, it's, to Grace's point, it's not a technical challenge today. It's a technical challenge that has been overcome. It's, I think, a regulatory issue of how are you going to, how is the government going to tag and manage all, because you can send money to France or anywhere in the world very, very quickly via crypto today. The question of whether you can send it legally quickly is another question. Or like, are you compliant by taking that action? And the bank's not there to save you, and nobody's there to check. To Grace's point, and tools like that will start to be built on top of platforms like Domo, of just like, hey, what do you think? Where's this going?
Yeah. The regulatory compliance is huge. The utility, like being able to see and understand, which is like exactly the problem that Domo's addressing for the business side, making it accessible. I talked to Zach. I did a whole episode with Zach Pettit on this, sort of recapping the biggest fintech conference in the world. And it's just insane how complicated fintech is. Like the layers of dependencies and things that all need to like feed into each other are so wild. And I think in part because of the regulation, in part because the banks already sort of own that relationship. Like, one vision of the future is like, yeah, we all have crypto wallets, but it's basically inside our bank's app that we already have. And I mean, I think that's a vision that like sort of Domo fits into incredibly well and enables. It's like, just help me wrap my head around what is an increasingly complex array of transaction types and frequencies. And to help me understand the underlying like thing that's happening, and help my accountant interact with it, and help the government interact with it, and like whoever else needs to understand it. I don't know. It's like a block explorer for your like for your individual little world, set of worlds that your accountant can also use. Yeah,
like Domo can create an invoicing module that you can send somebody an invoice and they can choose to pay either through fiat or through your Ether Soul wallet or whatever. And then that can be sorted out in Domo. Or Stripe's going to just go start to let you add a ETH wallet inside of Stripe, or, JP Morgan or Mercury is going to allow you to do that. They're both going to happen at the same time.
Yeah. Is that one of the biggest features, Grace, the invoicing?
That's something that I would say we're kind of experimenting with still right now. I think invoicing generally is a pretty critical and vital part of a business's activities. So we do have some kind of prototypes built out for that. And we have some teams in our private alpha that are currently using that and giving us feedback. So I think for us, we're really focused on creating a really, really great user experience for all of the things that might be constituted as like basic business activities. So invoicing definitely plays a part in that.
How will you talk about the sort of the like starting conditions of the company? Like, where'd you meet your co-founders? Like, how'd you raise initial capital? You came out of a venture studio. Did that make that whole process easier? Yeah.
So we have I think an interesting story, because Saul, who is my co-founder, he's also my chief product officer and general counsel. He and I met before the venture studio. So we met at a company that he co-founded previously, and that company is called Concertive. So that company is a business that is built on managing spend and large corporate contracts for like boutique investment banks and private equity firms and law firms. So you can think like, giant corporate travel contracts or market data contracts, insurance policies that you're placing every year. And our customer point of contacts, in this business were the CFOs, the COOs, the GCs, the ops managers of each of those professional services firms. So it was kind of a place where it was we were able to get really familiar with the guts of a company, and we're able to see all of the different things that go on behind the scenes of these various businesses. And so at that company, he was co-founder, CTO, and general counsel. And I joined as an employee, maybe like number 15 or so, first in business development before becoming the company's first product manager. And so, we were able to overlap and work together quite a bit while I was there. Small company, CTO, product manager, there's a lot that we do together there. And so we had a really great time working together there. I think we, really started to understand each other's working styles, just had a lot of fun brainstorming. And, I kind of realized that he was someone that I really wanted to stay in touch with. I don't know if you guys know anyone, but I've never met anyone who's an entrepreneur and a developer and a lawyer. So I was like, this guy is crazy in the best way possible. So I was like, yeah, I got to stay in touch with this guy. And, Saul exited, after a short time of us being together at this company. And then I ended up leaving Concertive a little while later in 2021 to join that venture studio. So Saul and I reconnected and we were like, hey, like, what's going on? Let's catch up. And at that time, I learned that Saul had developed another really rare skill set, which was being a crypto degen. And he had gone like really deep into the crypto rabbit hole, just like he was contributing to Yearn. He was involved in LexDAO. He was yield farming. He was staking. And I was like, whoa, like, that's great. That's awesome. Super cool. So I decided to introduce him to the co-founders of the venture studio because we were building in crypto and DeFi, and Saul kind of started exploring ideas there as, an entrepreneur in residence or an EIR. And I was super happy because, I was still full-time with the venture studio, but we just had an opportunity to jam again and brainstorm. And so we would each kind of share what we were seeing day to day. Saul would pick my brain on, what I was experiencing in my role. And, we realized that I was dealing with a lot of problems while trying to run all these crypto companies and that other people felt similarly. So, basically after that, we were like, you know what, it feels really good to work together again. And in 2022, we decided that we were going to go all in on this. So Saul and I became co-founders and I transitioned out of the venture studio and they invested in us kind of a first check as an incubator / YC style.
Very cool. Did you try to raise capital beyond that or did you not need to for sort of getting started?
Yeah, I think we had considered the idea of raising a couple of times last year just because especially in the first half of the year, I think the market environment was good. And there were a lot of teams that are going out there and pitching ideas. And so, we kind of considered going out there and doing the same thing. I think for us, one, the market changed very quickly. And then number two, I think we were still very early on in our interpretation of how we were going to tackle the problem, in addition to kind of seeing how many other teams in the space were kind of coming in to tackle the problem. So, one of the big trends last year, which actually had a revival in the fall, was around this concept of DAO tooling. And so, there was kind of this, we were kind of trying to figure out how to tell the story around, no, we're not DAO tooling, but we know you're really excited about DAO tooling. And, I think after a while we were like, let's just focus on, building the story that we're really compelled by. And then, we can tell that story to people and see who it resonates with.
This seems like a superset of DAO tooling. Like the best business for managing a bunch of wallets for a group of people may just be the tool that all the DAOs adopt. Like they don't have to have you don't have to solve every one of DAO's problems all in one product.
Yeah, no, I think that's right. And I think the way that we've always viewed this is that, DAOs can use our product and DAOs would benefit from using a product like what we're building. But I think for us, the thing, we decided not to necessarily focus on DAOs as our primary audience or our primary target customer because we were still a little bit uncertain as to the stability of the DAO ecosystem. And I think we wanted to see how DAOs as organizations were going to evolve a bit more before we decided to, just say, this is our target audience, if that makes sense.
That makes a lot of sense. And that was a bet that paid off for sure.
I mean, you take a company out there, like Intuit's a $100 billion company, and like it touches a lot of different things and it has a lot of verticals, but then you take crypto, which is just very literally on chain, and they talk about money Legos and all of these principles, and it's like it's just such an exciting opportunity that you can kind of build horizontally or vertically, kind of any direction. And I just think y'all are smart to start at the center of just going, hey, here's the most like basic problem. You have all this money, you're trying to operate a business. How can you do anything, again, to the points we were talking about earlier, if you don't know how much money you have? Like, how are you going to manage a real business with fake tools, or with no tools?
Yeah, 100%. And I think there's so much power in a business being able to ask themselves, hey, how much did we spend on payroll last month? And then being able to answer that question in the next 5 seconds, and just really being able to equip themselves with all this information so that they can make the best business decisions, so that they do have a good sense of what their financial health looks like. I think there's so many aspects of being able to build a very strong and sustainable company that stem from having a really clean record of all of this activity. So yeah, no, I think, we're really excited about this. And I think the general group of people that we're impacting by building something like this, they're very, very talented entrepreneurs. There are people who really do want to build something impactful and, build something that is cutting edge. And the more that we can do to just say, hey, you focus on that and we'll make sure everything else is in order. I think, that's our way, I suppose, of contributing to those innovations. But I mean, yeah, even for, you, Eric, and you, Mitchell, like, what would you say is the most common behaviors that you notice when people are trying to keep track of things, or are they even keeping track of things? Is it Google Sheets? Like, what have you seen as well when you've talked to people about this?
Eric, what is your kind of like process for having your own, like you made a lot of money and then lost a lot of money in crypto, like a lot of us. How are you?
Look, it's not lost until you sell. All right. It's just a down. We got a long-term view. We're holding. Not everybody sold at the tippy top like a fucking genius, Mitchell. So stop rubbing it in.
I sold a little bit. I held a lot. So I know, but how do you think in terms, like, how do you organize this all in your head and in your world?
So to like, when you and I were kind of prepping for this, we kind of talked through like long-term and first principles, which is kind of what I want to spend the rest of the sort of the conversation on. Like, I really want to think in decades here. And I think like what struck me about Domo when I first looked at it, and Grace when we first talked, is like the decades outlook, right? So to me, like, I don't give a shit about the 18-month cycle of like prices up, prices down. Like, to me, it's sufficiently clear that a blockchain is a better database technology and like a better backbone for running a business. And it's going to take more than a few years for that to fully switch over. And we're going to take a ton of tools and sort of intermediate steps in the meantime to get there. But like, thinking about what becomes possible as that switch happens and as it becomes a meaningful percentage of business operations for, not just crypto native companies and customers, but plumbing companies and florists and, quote unquote normal companies. So I think that's what's exciting to me, and positioning, like Domo being positioned to be, like, as you said, Mitchell, the Intuit of the future, or the one that I had in mind was like the ADP of the future. Like, both of those are $100 billion companies that most people either don't know exist or barely think about, because they perform these like such critical functions that if you're not running a business, or even a big enough business to really have problems with it, because you can't just use cash accounting, then you really like, it's easy to overlook the value of the problem that gets solved and the value of the companies that get built here. And I think, this is a big enough, backbone transplant that we may have new winners. Like, there will be a new ADP, there may be a new Intuit, and like, I'm excited to see companies like Domo sort of as they get born that can grow into that over the next couple decades. Like that's a really fun sort of thing to watch and a game to play.
Yeah, and even to the idea of ADP being huge, Mercury Bank being huge, Intuit being huge, Xero as a competitor. Like there are all these kind of Stripe. There are a lot of public and private kind of finance tools that have not kind of flipped to crypto or really focused 1% of their energy on crypto. And I mean, an analogy would be like, oh, there's all these big tobacco companies and they're like legalizing marijuana on the side. And the whole like system that's being grown from these, we know on Twitter, Colin, these people who are making these entire companies, I mean, they have to use weird banking and they have to kind of develop all these tools to be able to work. And they're all waiting for this day that their whole business becomes sort of effectively institutionalized and adopted, because all of these big companies will just go acquire the smallest companies that are market leaders, or they will acquire, I'm sorry, not the smallest companies, but the market leaders in crypto that are, solving the problems already that they want to solve. It's also just weird to see, like, we live in this world of no code, and there's this bank out there, Column, that one of the Stripe founders went out and has started their own bank that's just like API bank. So really, crypto is pretty well all on API, and then now we have banks on API, and Gusto's rolled out an entire API. Like when again, back to my kind of thesis of like regulatory is probably the hurdle, because once this hits this like kind of point of no return, or when people really find a use for this transfer of money beyond just, number go up and we're going to get really rich, like these systems are all going to be able to converge pretty well. And it's going to happen by the big boys, and then it's going to happen by small companies who are leading the way in crypto. So, watching it all come together, I don't know if we're one more cycle away, or like, what does it take for? And again, like to Grace's point, like companies are already companies are already working inside of crypto. Like there are a bunch of people who are like, this is our main modus operandi today, but what's it going to take for lots of companies to work in crypto out there?
Yeah, no, I agree with you there. I think it's going to be a really exciting like next 5 to 10 years. And I think for me, right, if I think about, one of the questions that you had, Eric, was, what does the world look like 50 years into the future? I won't claim to know what that will look like or what that's going to be like, but so if you came to the podcast for that, sorry to disappoint.
That's why I show up. I'm hoping somebody will tell me.
Yeah. You had promised me, Eric, that I was going to find out the answer. We weren't even going to release this one.
That was just the clickbait title. That's we got you. Yeah, we're 40 minutes in. You're going to finish the podcast now. You're not going to quit.
We were going to hang on to that alpha, but that's
sorry. 50 years, Grace, please.
No, all good. 50 years in the future. I mean, I think my hypothesis is that 90% of all payments are going to be run on chain without people knowing that it's happening on chain, without knowing that they're interacting with a blockchain, without knowing that they're interacting with crypto assets. And the corollary that I think of is how today, when you use the internet, you have no idea what HTTP is doing. For the longest, I was never even taught about HTTP in school. Like, I don't even really fully understand exactly what's going on, but I'm able to open my browser. I'm able to go to google.com. I'm able to come do this podcast with you guys. And I don't really need to understand the protocol itself. And I think the reason that I'm like, okay, yeah, 90% is because I don't think that it's going to require that much behavior change from where we're at today to, that vision for 50 years in the future. Because, Mitchell, like you were saying earlier, we're accustomed to interacting with Venmo and Stripe and Zelle and all of these online banking interfaces. What we see on our screen, that's what we think of as money now, right? Like when I look at my Venmo account or I look at my bank account, this screen is telling me that I have, $100 in my account or $1,000 in my account. I don't see the money. I don't interact with the money other than just through these numbers on a screen. So this is already digital money that we're using day in and day out. And there are tons of economies, well, maybe not tons of economies, but there are very large economies that are almost entirely cashless. If we think about China and how people in China pay for things, it's almost entirely via WeChat Pay and or Alipay. And, this goes back to, I think, the example that you gave, Mitchell, where it's like, yeah, people use Tap to Pay, Apple Pay for everything. And so the human behavior, which is usually the hardest thing to change, is already in a place today where, being able to adopt a maybe slightly different form of digital money or digital assets, I think it's well positioned to do that. And again, the main driver of all of this, in my opinion, is that humans love convenience and more convenient solutions. And once we get used to the experience that this technology brings, it's going to be very hard to go back, right? Like once I get used to being able to send $100 from my place in New York to Saul in Japan, and for it to settle instantly and for him to be able to access it instantly, it's going to be very difficult for me to want to go back and experience anything less than that.
Yeah, I think it's interesting. You brought up a few things there. I think one of the interesting things is like, we don't all have to decide to use wallets for that future to be true, right? For most of these transactions to move onto the blockchain. Like imagine, Visa, MasterCard, like just decided to switch their backbone, like centralized quiet decision makers can make changes without us even knowing to move us towards a blockchain future. And we could still use credit cards and bank accounts and it can all still settle. Bank accounts, maybe less so, but the other is like the sort of what changes when the blockchain is the backbone of everything. I think that's really interesting. So the early use cases is a cool thing to focus on for what changes with smart contracts. Like I think Balaji said, like the metabolism of business changes when everything settles instantly, right? All of the money that's locked up in ACH transfers or 2-week international transfers or like all of that garbage is just gone. I think fraud prevention is a huge thing that banks spend a ton of money on. It slows everything down. So like the automation of payments, streaming payments, auditing, like hopefully it eventually makes accounting meaningfully easier thanks to things like Domo and, just the reliability of the data. And if accounting is easier, hopefully taxes get easier. What else sort of goes on that list of like reasons that life gets better?
Or like, does this happen from a bottom up or like a top down in the sense of, does the backbone of JP Morgan change or does the backbone of the Fed of a centralized digital currency change? Or do we just get some app like Venmo where I can tap my iPhone onto your iPhone, or I can tap my iPhone onto the register. And now we have this free exchange again. And don't all these companies miss the float? But like, our win is somebody's using all this float, Eric.
Yeah. Well, they at Money 2020, Vinod Khosla went on stage and was like, which is just such a ballsy thing to do at a fintech conference. He goes up and his like closing remark on his talk was like, I issue a challenge to entrepreneurs to reduce the profitability and size of the financial sector by 90%. Like finance is too profitable. We do not have a healthy, balanced economy because finance is like this overgrown thing that is like extracting too much value from basically every other industry. And I was like, the one person in the back like clapping and whistling, and there's a bunch of other people in the finance industry like fuck. But I think that's so cool, and I think like this is the kind of thing that's going to change that, or could change that.
Yeah. Are they going to give up their 3% in their 2 weeks without kicking and screaming? No way.
No, of course not. Not willingly, but that's like I think it'll be really interesting. Like, is Domo going to have to, like, are the Domos of the future going to have to sort of directly compete with JP Morgan to unseat that? Like, the way I explain crypto to people, like my mom, is like transactions are going to get cheaper. Like transactions are going to get softwareified and they'll get cheaper. And so when they get cheaper, more of them happen. So instead of doing 2 transactions a day, you might do 200 transactions a day. So what are those transactions going to be, and how are they going to work? And like, who's going to execute them? Maybe it will be Visa and JP Morgan. Maybe it will be entirely new core providers. Maybe regulation doesn't let us change. Maybe like, I don't know, but it's all interesting chaos soup.
It's the Black Mirror episode where you send out a tweet and you either have more money or less money, depending on how good your tweet was. And you're just typing away. But no, so yeah, a ton of like it happens bottom up, it happens top down, it happens with a ton of convenience and a ton of freedom and a ton of like savings, and then new problems pop up of. You're right. Fraud prevention is a huge thing that Amex spends part of that 3% trying to deal with. And when someone steals your Amex and goes and buys something, they pay you back, and somebody eventually pays that, and it has to all get sorted out. But like crypto fixes that, and then crypto totally breaks that, because you just never get your money back with crypto. You're done. Yeah.
Is Grace, how much do different chains behave differently from your perspective, right? Like, because some chains are compliant with sort of like the core providers and the government and stuff like that. Is it kind of like Bitcoin's like cash because nobody can track it unless you report it, and Ethereum is like accepting a credit card because it's automatically sort of recorded? Are you totally agnostic as to which chain wins? You just need to figure out who to play with, like. You said your first startup was like a very big bet on a chain. So like, how do you think about it now coming into your second?
Yeah, I think for us, we remain relatively agnostic to ecosystems. That said, individually, we may have different opinions or perspectives on, which philosophies resonate with us more. I would say each of the different chains and ecosystems that we've looked at do feel very different culturally and are built very differently from, kind of a code and development perspective. I think, for all of the chains, at the very least, it's possible to track all transactions. It's maybe you could argue pseudonymous, but if you put together an activity trail and, you just spent a little bit of time doing that, you could arguably put together an identity or persona of who this person is and what they're trying to do. And so this is true for all chains. I think for us, there's a few different narratives that emerge when we look at different chains. And it also, I think, really depends on what that chain is trying to optimize for the most, right? There's kind of that trilemma, that triangle that we see referred to a lot, where one angle is decentralization, one angle is security, and one angle is scalability. So there's always some trade-offs that it looks like chains have to make. For us, when we're thinking about building out our company and building out our product, we're really focused on, interviewing people and getting to know people and identifying where they today have most of their activity and what they might be active on very soon. And so, just given that, I would say the vast majority of what we've seen is, there's lots and lots of people on Ethereum, transacting on Ethereum, building on Ethereum. But with the advent of all these different L2s and optimistic rollups and ZK rollups, and this whole kind of like app chain narrative that's becoming stronger and stronger as well, like in the Cosmos ecosystems and even in some of the L2 stories, I think there are things that will be coming out very soon, probably this year or next year, that may change the way that, again, everything works in this industry.
Just when you think you get your feet. Well, no, you never think you have your feet in crypto. You just never, you're just constantly tumbling and underwater and, hoping to stay in the black. That's been my experience anyway. Yeah. But I find it way more, stable, I guess, in the second half of this year. Like, it's so much easier to just go have a conversation with somebody with a decades long view who's identified a problem in the tooling or infrastructure of the space and who's like, nope, I'm going to spend 10 years building this tool and solving this problem. And, here's my customer and here's our progress. And, I'll keep you updated quarterly, instead of the kind of like rise and fall of projects and, people making tomato NFTs and, stuff like that.
Yeah. I mean, I've told you both this like kind of anecdote that came from my friend Eamon or I had worked with all of, or I'd met a lot of crypto people last year. We're all kind of like running around in crypto and it's a lot of fun. And my friend Eamon was like, a lot of these people would have just been like drop shippers 3 years ago. And it is like, it's a great line. And, there are drop shippers who are still doing great, probably, God bless them. But, it's just like the fad changes and the kind of like hot ball of money moves around and it's kind of run through crypto. And so a lot of the people who, like I said, Eric, I want to be working with you 25 years from now. I want to have the like Sam Hinkie longest lens in the room. And a lot of people with very long lenses in crypto are still there. And the people who don't see it have come and gone.
Yeah. This is like when the real building happens. I feel like when the stripes get earned. Has it been easier to operate in this environment for you, Grace, or harder? Like on the recruiting or customer development side, or like has anything gotten measurably harder from the end of this year, from the beginning?
I would say, given the product that we're building, we've actually received quite a lot of interest because a few different factors around timing. I think number one, end of year and tax season. And a lot of companies in 2022, it was their first year of operations. And so a bunch of people are like, okay, what am I supposed to do? Like, how do I even get started? Who do I talk to? So, those conversations I think have been pretty fruitful. I think everyone's very willing to chat about those topics right now. I think the other aspect of, the market being at the state that it's at now is that people are very concerned about their burn and they are very concerned about their financial activity. And so a lot of people are now taking the time to try and look back and understand their spend behavior and understand how they might need to adjust it on a go-forward basis to be able to, continue sustaining themselves throughout, kind of these tough times. I think, my experience in terms of like talking to teams and talking to people sounds very similar to what you and Mitchell were just mentioning, where it feels a little bit easier to get more directly to people who are excited about building in this space in the long term and are
the real ones. Yeah.
yeah. The real ones who are like willing to stick it out and ready to stick it out and also excited about this period. I mean, looking at my Twitter now, way less noise. I can actually like hear thoughts and not just pumps and things like that. So, I think from that perspective, it's given us a little bit of breathing room to just think very deeply about, where are we headed? What are we building? What is the value proposition here? Who do we want to work with? And just approach these things with a bit more intention, which I'm very excited by.
Yeah. And on the distribution side, like how have you, is all the accounting interest in particular, like I'm interested in that because I think it's a good maybe representation of maybe a more mainstream view, right? Like most accountants, Mitchell is an exception probably, are not going to like leap at the opportunity to learn a whole new technology and thing and set of tools. Are you getting inbound interest from accountants who are like, my clients are pushing me to figure this out. I have a bunch of questions, like I'm being forced to figure this out and I'm coming to you? Or are they like much more proactive than I'd imagine? Like, are you learning anything about the macro of adoption from that sort of seat that you have there?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think for us, we're kind of thinking about Domo as the business interface that business teams can use to interact with their accountants or their accounting teams. And these accountants might be internal accountants. These accountants may be at, external firms. But the idea of being able to give the business a tool that they understand and that they can use. I think there's a lot of value there, because a lot of the feedback that we've heard from teams who, do have accounting software like QuickBooks, or maybe even are trying out some of the crypto accounting tools, a lot of the business people aren't really going into those tools very much because they're scared of the tools, or they're scared that they're going to mess something up. And it's not really a world, or even it's not necessarily terminology that they're very comfortable with. And so a lot of the time they kind of just say, hey, person who is a technical accountant, please help me do the thing and ask me the questions. And, let's just, talk via email, or let's get on a call and you screen share and I'll just verbalize all the answers, or we'll talk about it in Slack, right? And so I think for us, we haven't done, I would say, a ton of marketing last year. We haven't been like super out there with what we're building, mostly just leveraging our own personal networks to make sure that we're working with people who really understand what it is that we're building and can give us very good feedback. So for the most part, I would say most of the people in terms of distribution have been project founders, operators who kind of want this business interface that is a great upgrade from an Excel spreadsheet and any other records that they've had in the past, that they can fully contextualize. And then, for example, they can invite their accountant to Domo. And rather than the accountant needing to learn an entirely new tool or an entirely new system per se, it's very easy to identify, okay, this is the transaction history. Here's all the context. Okay, great. This is all the information that I need to be able to do my job. It's kind of more from that perspective. One of the customers/partners that we did bring on this year is actually an accounting firm. And we have a great relationship with the head of crypto accounting at this firm. And she started using Domo and was like, wow, this makes my life so much easier. I'm going to use this on all my Web3 clients. So she started using Domo earlier in 2022 on their entire group of Web3 clients, and it enabled them to grow their business massively and take on a lot more clients, just because we're cutting out a lot of the manual work and we're cutting out a lot of the kind of back and forth that's usually happening.
Yeah, that's awesome. Love to hear that. Those are all good words. What else you got, Mitchell? I feel like we're sort of winding down. I have wildly off topic questions for Grace, but if you got anything else that like fits this thread, hit us with it.
Just like, who is your person, and kind of what is the next step to getting them the crypto bookkeeping of their dreams in Domo?
So when you say who is your person, as in like who is like the target?
Who is the person that, like, if you're going to build your product avatar or user avatar, who is that person? Is it Grace from 2 years ago who's underwater of trying to operate a crypto a crypto incubator, or who is this person, and like how do they get in touch, or what is their next step? Should they go to their accountant? Should they go to you? Like, how are we going to get this? How are we going to get people right in 2023?
Yeah, totally. I think for us, the target persona really is someone who is maybe like me at the venture studio in that role, someone who is a project founder that's like, I need to get a hold of my finances. I need to make sure that I have a good record here. And that way, when I am ready to pass things off to an accountant, it's not me spending 2 months at the end of the year trying to compile everything together. It's a version of me which has been great about doing this throughout the year, so I can answer all the questions that I have about my business, and I can pass it off really easily to the people who need to transform this data further. So I would say that's really kind of the person that we'd like to speak more to this year. I think the other side of that is this person will inevitably be working with an accountant if they are serious about their business and they want to build a sustainable company. So, also actively reaching out to accountants to really understand both sides of that relationship, if that makes sense. We want to make sure that we're building a tool that, definitely helps the business person, but also needs to make it easy for the next person to, take the next step of the process. Yeah.
It's interesting that the customers like come in pairs. Like you can go through either door and still end up with like that winning that business or that accountant, and either one sort of leads you to other customers. Like there's inherent sort of virality in this. Like if you are the best solution for the problem, it will lead you to others very naturally. It's such a good thing to do customer development through and meet people and just keep doing calls. And like these, you can just really grind your way to a very big company, I feel like, through these relationships.
Totally. And, basically, I mean, I know we're only like 1 week into the year, but for the last, period of time, I've basically said Tuesdays are my call days. And all I do on Tuesdays is I talk to businesses and I talk to accountants and I just learn about what their current situation is, crypto specific, crypto non-specific. I just want to learn about what they do day to day. I want to learn about what keeps them awake at night, what worries them, what they're anxious about. And that's been very fruitful. So I'm excited to kind of continue doing that exercise. I think for the product that we're building, to your point, Eric, there's some inherent network effects that are kind of just part of this product. I think there's a stickiness to it when you think about pulling in your transaction data and adding all of the context to it. And then because you are always needing to work with other people on this, you're always pulling other people into the app. Or if you're making payments, for example, you've always got a counterparty to what it is that you're trying to do. So just through the actions that people want to be able to do and need to do that, Domo could facilitate, for example, it's got this very, very organic way of expanding its network.
Hey, I just got you. Congratulations. You just got paid. Check your wallet. OX, blah, 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 coming from Domo. Yeah, really like linking the person to the wallet and creating an organized world. I love it. So go to domo.so, click get started, talk to Grace next Tuesday. Let's go.
Yeah. Clear your Tuesdays, DM Grace, and get on her calendar. Okay, my off-topic question is Grace, we met through Athena, who has sponsored this podcast and who I'm a fan of, but I have not heard before someone do what you did, which is basically like an EA through Athena was your first hire for your startup from your co-founding team. And I'm curious, like, what you did and how that went and like, what they're doing for you and just kind of like talk about that as a very baby early stage company, what the day-to-day looks like amongst the team.
Yeah, totally. So my EA's name is Ange, and bringing her onto our team last year was, if not the best business decision, one of the best business decisions I think that we made as a team, because bringing her on board gave us so much leverage. One of the biggest areas where she's contributed and is continuing to contribute and actually own is this process that we call UAT, or user acceptance testing. So because we're building software and we have a certain kind of level of quality that we want to make sure that we're putting out to anyone who may be interacting with our product, we always put new features through a very rigorous testing process. And my kind of guidance is basically try as hard as you can to break the app every time. Do all of the functions, do all of these crazy combinations of things, try to break the app. And if you can't, great, let's approve it and let's, put it into production. But always, I would say, whether it's big or small, there's always something that comes up as like a little bit off, or, maybe we want to take a look at this, and then we'll make a judgment call for whether or not, we want to push that through or continue working on it. But that process has made our software, I think, just again, able to meet the quality of standard that we want it to be at. And it's also given us so much time to be able to, do all of the high leverage things that we need to do as a team as well, while having comfort that like it's being taken care of. So that's probably one of the biggest areas that we have her working on, and where she's provided a ton of help for us. There are some other areas as well around helping us build and keep a CRM for all of the people that we've been connecting with that are really important for us to be able to reach out to and get feedback from them on our product and things like that. But yeah, I would say UAT is probably like my favorite example. Yeah,
that's awesome. It is so... I love collecting the stories of everybody who's like got a Athena EA or VA, and especially as like when it's just your founding team, there's so much to do. And a lot of it is that stuff that is like, it has to be done. It's not super hard. but it's draining or tiring or just takes a huge volume of hours and takes you away from some of that other really high value stuff that you can do. So I think it's a really sort of wise approach to like get somebody right away who can help you with the high volume tasks that just have to be done and help you organize the information, manage the outreach, and sort of keep the pace of the organization high. So thank you for that. And like, this is actually like my third person I've talked to today that I've just like met through Athena or is also an Athena person. So it's turning out to be an amazing sort of group of humans as well. I know Mitchell has his own flavor of this ice cream, but I don't care. I don't care what it is.
Your podcast, Eric, is mostly turned to, change my life and be about, convincing me to take the next steps in my life. So I've been asking you both about Athena, and just the biggest like thing that y'all have told me about this is like the difference between me just trying to go onto like Craigslist and go, hey, Filipino VA, and like try to do everything myself, is like have someone who's vetted and trained and have a support network beyond just like, okay, good luck, here's your VA, you're best friends now.
I did a lot of attempts at that through Upwork and stuff over the years, and it's just like I just kind of always failed and blamed myself. And it wasn't until I just like over invested, it wasn't until I went to like the highest quality version of this that I was like, oh, there's a real skill set here that like you could make up for with patience and money and effort. But like, I'd rather just hire Athena who nails it from the beginning and makes it so that I can't fail at this. Like, it just took that kind of level of desire. And finding that, I mean, it didn't used to exist, but this podcast exists to market Baldridge Financial Services and the ecosystem of products around it. I don't know what you're talking about, Mitchell. That's my main focus. Is not improving your life. It's introducing people to your products and services. And now Domo, that's been, that's manifesting a beautiful crypto future. That's what we're doing here.
I mean, yeah, I remember like when I first heard about Gusto and told everyone, or just totally flipped over, and like Domo is that. Yeah, you're just like, oh, you're now finding people who care about their product and who want to grow their product and who are in it for the long term. It's an easy choice. And then when you, as an accountant, when you can get good help, it's great.
Yeah, this one's going to be an interesting company to see grow, I think, because like Gusto was such an immediate problem for so many people right at the same time. And this is just, it's so intertwined with, you have to have already taken the crypto pill or already be working in the industry to appreciate the value of this solution, I think. But as that grows and as this tool gets better, it's going to make that solution and that ecosystem, that lifestyle of a business more attractive and make it more accessible. And like, I don't know, I think it'll be really cool to sort of see how this grows. And thank you, Grace, for solving such a big problem that everybody needs solved, whether they realize it or not. And it'll be very appreciative to you in 20 years when 90% of transactions are going through blockchains. And you're helping all of us run quality businesses and not get audited, and accountants, just have easier lives. And there's less people in jail.
I think that would be a great future. If we can manifest that, when we're successful, if we can make that happen, that would be amazing. So, I think the other aspect of this is like, I feel like I've seen more and more people going down this path of entrepreneurship and starting micro businesses. I think what you were saying earlier as well, Mitchell, like no code. A lot of people are really experimenting with building these new companies, these new projects. And yeah, maybe they have talent that's coming from Asia. Maybe they have talent that's coming from Europe or South America or anywhere in the world. And so we have a lot of these new types of organizations that are going to be built as well. And I think that's something that we're really excited to kind of keep a pulse on and to identify the needs for and build for too. So, lots of things to look forward to.
Yeah, you're facilitating whole new types of organizations, sort of globally. That's super exciting. Cool. Well, Domo.so, is there anything else that people need to know about you or how to find you or how to use Domo or anything else?
Yeah, our website is domo.so. We have a Twitter, which is domo.so, dot spelled out. Feel free to DM there if you have any questions, or if you want to DM me on Twitter, I'm at guacamole, or guacamole. So it's guacamole, but instead of an A, it's an O. Feel free to DM me there as well.
Grace's last name is Guo. So that is explains, it's not a typo. She knows exactly what she's doing. It's very clever. I will also say that Grace will whoop your ass at Settlers of Catan if you want to challenge her. That's the
I'm
other
always
the
down
other
for a
challenge.
game.
All right. Thank you both so much for taking the time. Mitchell, thank you for making up for my accounting inadequacy and bringing your degen expertise. Grace, I appreciate you coming on, sharing your story, solving your problems, building your companies. I can't wait to see what the future holds.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me. This is great. I had a ton of fun.
Yeah, thanks, Eric.